yet. Okay, so if you can move slightly. Well, to all the participants to the CIB Task Group 86 workshop webinar. Good afternoon to all of you here in the room. And in the room, we've got about 30 people. Sheriff, if you can show the people around the room who is here. Very keen and very warmed up for the discussion. And on the online, we expect around 20 people from Europe and Asia. So good afternoon here, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening to us in the world. The connection between this real and virtual universe will be provided by our colleague, Sheriff, a PhD student at QUT, who will be operating the camera and who will be helping us with the questions which will start appearing towards the end of the session from our participants online. Now, they will not be able to speak. They will present their comments on the screen, so we will read this. But they will be able to see us and hear the discussion, so in this way they will be participate. We have a very full program for this session, and the session will start with presentation by QUT students, and in a little while I'll tell more about this presentation. After the presentation, we'll ask our panelists to express their comments about the presentations, about the topic. And we have here panelists, if you can point out the camera to the panelists. So from the right, we have Michael Goldschmidt from the United States, Yiping Zhang from China, Neville Pierce from New Zealand, and Hiroshi from Japan. One person who is not sitting here in the first row of the panelists is Wendy Miller. Wendy is the chair of the conference, and without her, all of this here wouldn't have happened, and we wouldn't have students motivated by Wendy to do this project and help us. Wendy, can I ask you to please to join the panelists? Another person, I'm not sure whether already connected, is Natalie Rebel from the World Health Organization in Geneva. Natalie is also a panelist, and as a panelist, she will be able to express herself in voice, not just in comments. And of course, we've got from the Netherlands, we've got Wim Bakens, who is the Secretary General of CIB.
Good afternoon. Thanks to you.
Hello, Lydia. It's Natalie. Hello to everybody.
Hello, Natalie. Very nice to hear you. So after the panelists express their comments, views, and opinions, we will then open for the discussion to those who are here in the room, and we'll read the comments on the screen. So we will then decide in what order we are going to do. Perhaps comments from the room, comments from the screen. Cities. We are cities and CIB webinar, and a number of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with the CIB work, but for those who are not, CIB is the International Council for Research and Innovation of Building and Construction. What the objective of this big national organization is to stimulate and facilitate international cooperation and international exchange, information exchange between the partners and organizations which not always cooperate or exchange information, in particular the academia and the practitioners. So at the end, for anything to happen, this collaboration and information exchange has to be in place, otherwise there wouldn't be much action. CIB operates via the commissions or task groups, and we are one of them. Task Group 86 focus on healthy cities. So our objective is stimulate and facilitate international collaboration in the area of research on healthy cities. So the overall ultimate goal of this activity is to achieve that all the cities on the globe are healthy and all humans live in healthy cities. Are we there yet? Well, the answer is very clearly no, we are not there yet, we are far from there. So there's plenty of work to do, and we are hoping that what we are doing here as a group or international group across the world will bring us 1 or 2 steps closer to this goal. And this goal of our task group motivated QUT students to prepare some background material for us, to discuss and to provide with food for thoughts and for the discussion. Very much hoping that they will be inspired even more after this workshop to continue this work. And we are hoping that all those in the room and all those who will join us will also be motivated to form a big group working on this. So without any further ado, I will pass to our presenters, Viva and Assad, to what they prepared for us.
Yeah. Student project. This presentation was given by Rahuporo and my colleague Viva, actually known as Shinwang. This project is about healthy cities and was actually conducted by 3 undergraduate students, Mark Milana, Jason Malustad, and Tim Henry, and 2 postgraduate students, that is Yasadame Rahuporo and Wong Shin. On the project, we have actually investigated about different cities, such as sustainable cities, smart cities, energy efficient cities, livable cities, and healthy cities. The reason for investigating all these cities is that when we were researching about healthy cities, we found interrelation in all these cities, and they were kind of interconnected with each other. So we thought that it would be worthwhile to actually research about all these cities to have a much more enhanced knowledge about all these cities. Aim of the project. Now, our aim is to actually identify the definitions and indicators to actually measure and define and measure the healthy cities. This was actually done by reading a number of research papers and literature review, and then from that we actually found a number of indicators and collected a lot of information. We would want to, the plan is to actually present that information here in this conference, so actually we can get your responses and feedback and develop the selected criteria according to the responses of this. Objective is to actually come up with a set of criteria that can actually be used to rank and weigh. For me personally, I was actually really interested in this project because I come from Pakistan and the people aren't really aware about the influence of environment on their health, and because they suffer loss. And my plan is to actually kind of help people kind of contribute here to come up with a set of criteria that I actually propose back home, and people can actually apply that, and the people of Pakistan can actually live a much more prosperous life. As I mentioned, we have actually reached a number of different cities, such as sustainable cities, smart cities, intelligent cities, and healthy cities. One of them is sustainable cities. Exactly are sustainable cities. They're actually defined as the towns or cities that are actually taking steps to make an environment that is healthy for their residents. Not only that, but they're also in a locally based economy so that their people can, so that the residents of those cities can actually live a prosperous life. The 3 sustainable development, environment, social and economic. In environment, you have air, you have water, material, land, etc. In social, you have social things such as education and safety, community and culture, transport and system, etc. In economic, you actually concentrate on the employment ratio, the wealth of the city, the financial condition, not only of the resident, but also of the government of the city. So, in order to find the indicators and stuff, we actually looked at a number of existing programs, and actually see United Nations Millennium Development Goals, ISO 37101, or 37101, 3120, and ISO 21929. What exactly are sustainable products? Sustainable products are products that have no or minimum negative impact on the environment. They only provide benefits over their life cycle, but they are also helpful in maintaining a clean and safe environment for their residents. How do you know if a product is sustainable? We actually know about it by a number of different labels, like systems such as the EPD. EPD stands for Environment Product Declaration. It's actually the life cycle of a product, whether a product be harming the environment over its life cycle, or whether it would be beneficial to use that product in an environment. On performance criteria, there are a number of sustainable performance criteria like environment, social, and economic. In environment, you look at the air quality, emission to water, in land, water and sanitation, etc. In social, you look at health, governance, responses to emergency situations, gender equality, child mortality, and etc. In economic, you actually look at the employment ratio, the wealth of the financial situation, use of energy resources. What smart city? A smart city is a city that actually utilizes information and communication technology and utilizes the vital information of the main systems of a city, such as the water or energy or the transportation system, of the public engagement, governance, etc. This not only helps in monitoring and managing the safety and security of the residents, but also helps in managing and responding to disasters such as the earthquake and tsunamis more efficiently. It generates benefits for its residents and citizens. Pilot cities. Now see on the left-hand side, we have pilot smart cities from China, Beijing District, Tianjin, Benhai New Area, etc. There is a list on the left-hand side. On the right side, we have a list from the European Union. So there are cities such as Amsterdam, Barcelona, Bristol, etc. Smart. Now we hear the word smart product. The first thing that comes in our mind is, what exactly are smart products? What are the characteristics that actually differentiate them from ordinary products? Here we have some characteristics of smart products. They're autonomous, adaptable, they're active, they have a human-like interaction, and these are the characteristics that actually differentiate them from ordinary products. The tiers of smart products: information handling, problem identification, and decision making. Information handling is the most basic kind of smart product, where you actually put information and it processes that. In problem identification, the product actually notifies the user about the problem that arises. But the most advanced one is the decision-making one, as it independently makes the decisions that are required. Now here we have a number of performance criteria of smart cities, such as smart economy, smart mobility, smart environment, smart people, smart living, and smart governance. Now, Wong Shin would actually be discussing about energy efficient and net zero energy efficient cities. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wang Xin. I come from the northeast of China. where air pollution is a little bit serious. So that's why I choose this healthy city project. Actually, I'm looking for a way to make me fatter, if it is possible. Okay, the energy efficient and net zero energy cities. Okay. Energy efficient city means they can use the least energy and meet the citizens' needs. Zero energy cities means the energy they use is less than or equal to the renewable exported energy. Efficient cities should have energy efficient products. What are energy efficient products? There's less energy compared with the conventional products. For example, like the energy bulb. Energy efficient products also need to consider about the product's SCA, that means cycle assessment. If produced, they should consider about the use and what will be happen at the end of the life for the products. And these are for categories for energy efficient buildings and houses, which are metric of balance, system accounting system, rating factors, normalization period, and the balance period. Has the criteria indicators from EPBD, which means Energy Performance Building Directive. So the indicators of mass balance is the primary energy in kilowatt hour per meter square. Indicators for each performance criteria. And city. What livable city means it's on the top of the livable ranking. And there are 3 surveys for livable city, which are Mo Cities Index, Globability Ranking, Quality of Living Survey. Some characters of livable cities: healthy care, education, cultural environment, safety, transport. Fortunately, the most livable city in the world is in Australia. It's in the year of 2016. Healthy city. So, the healthy city should meet the needs and requirements of the citizens, and so should continually creating and improving living conditions. From that, healthy city must contribute to the goal of health, life, the quality of life, and here are essential factors for a healthy city. They control the basic environment elements and easy access to facilities, parks, and gardens, level of social capital, and level of healthy awareness. Healthy products. Healthy products should be responsible for keeping the environment healthy. And here are some examples of healthy products like low emitting carpet, low VOC paint. 3 themes of performance criteria. One is air quality with indoor and outdoor environment. All policies should consider about the health, the urban and neighborhood planning, equipped facilities, and healthy care system. One is lifestyle. They should control the limit of for products for the tobacco use. Keep a healthy campus because it is a campus without smoke It's a smoke-free area. And health cities should encourage people to do more exercise, and the food choice may be more. It's good. Presentation to Asad.
Thank you, Mo. Today we would be actually showing you the list of indicators. After the research and stuff, we came up with indicators about these cities. Now we exactly have 246 indicators, and we show you how massive the list is. Here you can see. Now the only thing here is that a few unit of measures aren't present, but the purpose of showing this list is to give you an idea of how many indicators we have. Now from list, we would be actually choosing a number of proper indicators that are actually relatable to healthy cities, and that would be done by a survey. To show you that survey, we have an example of it to decide which indicators are and which are not of healthy cities. Here, survey, we have included some of the indicators, but not all of them. Particulate matter, PM10 and PM2.5. And if you consider it to be an indicator that is actually useful, you may use this. If you consider it to be possibly useful, but you're in doubt, you can actually use this. And if you consider it to be completely useless, then it can be actually discarded by using this. Survey would be conducted by not only the panelists present here, but it would be conducted by people all over the world. Now, we haven't actually defined who exactly would be conducting the survey, but it would be people with expertise. Still elements for criteria. Now, here, elements for criteria for different organizations, such as in the European Union, we have metric of balance, accounting, system boundary, weighting factors, etc. In the United Nations, we have mandated performance targets, homogeneity, and curated underlying data. A few questions for the panelists that are present here in TG86. An LCA, life cycle assessment, be conducted on a city? From the area listed, which ones could be applied to cities or to health cities? How can these criteria be ranked, weighed, and normalized according for differences in things such as the population, geographical location, and even the economic status of different cities? Ranking or quantitative measures. Does any of these indicators already exist? Out on what is not being measured, how can it be collected, and can some other indicators be required by existing programs such as livable cities, energy efficiency, etc.? Thank you.
Many thanks, both of you. So I'm sure now you can appreciate the amount of work the student team has done to prepare this, and the amount of work which is now left to do something useful out of this. So actually we would like to be able to come up with something and say this is the most livable city in the world, and go down in the ranking. And to it's a long way before we'll be able to do this, looking at this long list and these little questions which the students posed. So at this point, I would like to pass to our panelists and get your comments or thoughts about this. Of course, you will be able to address all of these questions. You may choose to address something else which you think is the most relevant, but to guide us how to start this discussion. Let's start with Wendy, who provided a lot of input to the students, and then go in this direction, and then at the end we'll ask you, Natalie, to comment on and provide your thoughts, and also from the perspective of the WHO, because we know the WHO has a healthy city program as well. So Wendy.
I think in guiding the students through this process for the last semester, the thing that struck me is that health is not just happens to my body. It is related to the built environment in which I live and related to the regulations that my government has. It's related to the businesses that we allow. It's related to our economic circumstances. It's related to our employment. It's a very complex thing that we solve any of our health issues in Australia. You know, we have a number of issues that are different perhaps to Pakistan, for example, or Northeast China. We have the air pollution, for example, necessarily in Australia that other countries have. But nevertheless, addressing health is a complex thing, and it's not just something for scientists or medical professions. It's something that politics need to get involved in, and building leaders and builders and employers, etc.
Thank you. I want to compliment the students on an unbelievably monumental task. I think all of us are looking at the side of the panel going, you did all this work, because it's fascinating. I have three comments I'd like to make because I care very much about 3 points that you made. I think the first is that although you covered a tremendous amount of information and points, that in the slides, in a couple of slides, it mentioned climate and the livability factors. And I think we need to be very careful about that because, one, a lot of times we don't get to pick the climate we live in. And I think that it sends the wrong message if we say, in any way, criticizing Melbourne. I'm sure I will end up being there someday and enjoying it, but human beings are a very resilient species. And, you know, we have people living in Antarctica because we can change that environment to make that more livable. And so if we arbitrarily say that because the weather and the climate is perfect in this location, that therefore it should be ranked higher, I think is discouraging to people who are in unlivable climates or marginally livable climates that can change, and especially the indoor environment, more livable. Second, and I apologize for doing this because with all of the metrics, I think I'm looking on this side going, you might have too many metrics, and then I'm going to add one. I think that as a species, human beings also tend to place ourselves on a pedestal above the rest of the environment. And I think livable cities has to acknowledge that we are not the only species on the planet. And I think we have to also look at what is our environmental impact that does not concern us. And, you know, does Melbourne, I'm sure actually is very ecological, but does Melbourne also generally affect the environment, which we are not a part of, or part of, but not a major participatory. And then the third is almost the opposite of what you just said. If too many metrics, it really means a lot to us. Probably means a lot to WHO and the UN and the various governmental bodies, but it's also important to make the information available to the common person, because they're the ones that in many countries are put in charge of the government. And I think that we need to make it understandable at a level where a common person can say, I understand why our city is 56. And but I need to understand what does it take for our city to make those structural changes to come to. You know, there's a in the United States from a very full radio announcer, Garrison Keillor, and he has a joke that the city grew up in, everybody's above average, which is, you know, statistically impossible, but everyone will try to achieve that. We have to look at what is the information going to be used for, and can we use it for positive benefit to say this is the metrics by which everybody will try to then make their community more livable. But right now, I'm just saying this personally, there's too many variables and so many, and then you've got to play that game of, is this variable more important important than this other variable. So is Melbourne ranked higher because you put more weight? I know that part of our task was we were going to weight those variables, but I think we need to actually run some scenarios to see if a city that I think we would all agree was probably not a livable city, but with the numbers would actually appear to be more livable than it is. We have to be careful about that. So I'll pass the mic, but I'm trying to add more to your task, but I think that the points I'm making are really looking at how information is going to be used, really carefully at the environment that not us. And then again, I'm cautioning you about using too much about climate as a deciding factor, because again, it's not something that we are going to imagine tomorrow that Melbourne becomes #1 and then everybody decides to move there. That then destroys what was making. So we have to be careful about that is one of the major factors.
Thank you much, Michael. Yinping?
I'm Yinping Zhang from Tsinghua University. In China, health building is now a very hot topic. I'm participating a seminar in Tsinghua University. In fact, it's organized by Lancet editorial board. I think 3 key questions for this health building topic. The first, water should be included. How to weigh the factor each. Third, to evaluate the interaction among factors. Many different countries have different answer. In China, for example, how the city size, how about the population size is important. But maybe this answer is quite different from the North European countries. And I think we should also pay attention to the blind point. I told one time WHO meeting with you and head on CAC. In meeting, I asked them why now ignore the disease burden of inequality or impotence. They say because it's not important. But maybe in China, in developed countries, in countries, it's not important. Although in China, it's very important. But it's a pity we cannot present the concrete data to support our assumption. This is our ongoing research to determine now the disease burden of impotence. That's all.
The air pollution is important everywhere. It is that we don't know enough about this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. A really nice presentation, and it's really good to see the breadth of what you're going for. It's important to think about what a city is and how it's constructed and what we want to get across when we talk about a healthy city. A city is composed of people and an environment, but certainly where we're talking about a healthy city, I presume we're focusing on the health of people, and certainly that seems to be coming across. These are in households that have an environment inside the house. You have an external environment. You have transport systems and policies that shape and shift how people get around their city and what their interaction and feeling of their city is, and they're part of it in a social sphere as well. And you have good high-level social services there, but you're missing out some of the social supports. Is one of the things that on your quick scan through how a city helps its weakest citizens is probably very important to have in. It's a health for all and not just a health, because we're probably interested in raising the bottom up as much as leaving the top fly off. So those are things to really think about. As a statistician in me, and I guess sometimes, and weightings, I'm kind of thinking, and this is a straw man to be shot down, and I'd really like people to shoot this down. Why not say what we have for every city? We could calculate life expectancy of a newborn in that city. Why not see how the factors weight, the factors that we're interested in and think should be part of it, so how much impact they have on that life expectancy as something I'll stand up, and maybe that should be the thing that guides it. That's going to result in a lot more economic stuff than I'd like to see in there. So we have to think about what that's doing, but it's a straw or something to think about where that would go. But all really good work and really interesting to see where this is going.
Thank you very much, Hiroshi.
Very much. It's very nice work. And in Japan, we have also the same vision, what is the smart city or healthy city. And I'd like to introduce one assessment system, which is the CIB city. So kind of the assessment system, like the zero lead, and that is developed only to the building itself. But now the CIB city is expanded from the building to the total city, and assessment system was developed by Professor Murakami. And that system is very unique because there are many indices which is listed. That system is divided into two parts. One is the quality in the indoor quality or thermal environment, and on the quality of environment in building. The other one is the burden of environment, for example, the energy consumption, which influencing the environment outside the building. So the system divided into two parts, and Q divided by L. Q divided by burden. Q is larger is better. L is small is better. And Q divided L is one and indexes. And so they are trying to assess the around 100 cities in the world by that CIB system, CIB cities. And we reported the ranking from top of the city from the bottom. So that is very interesting assessment system. So maybe you can refer that system, I think.
Hiroshi, this is very useful, and we certainly will need to look into the way it has been done and see whether this is something which we can use for this work as well. At this point, I would like to ask Natalie. Invite your comments. Are you with Natalie?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Well.
Thank you very much. So it was really an amazing presentation showing us all great potential, but also some of the challenges that we might be facing in this area of work. And maybe my response would be slightly different, although by providing you some of the experiences that we have been having in the work in WHO when addressing healthy housing, healthy cities. And I'd like to give you first example of the housing and health guidelines that we are currently developing, and that Lydia has been a strong participant in the development of this work. And housing guidelines have the objective of defining some of the key standards for healthy housing and areas, and on some topics like crowding, indoor temperature, etc. The reason I'm mentioning these housing guidelines is because in some kind of way, once the standards, once recommendations will be drawn, they can be considered an indicator, right, to measure a healthy built environment. The challenge we have to face is that the evidence that exists building up those indicators needs to be very strong. It needs to, all indicators, all guidelines and recommendation that we are proposing needs to be ongoing very strong systematic reviews. And our systematic reviews, and that's the point, have shown that there are so many variations between the countries, between the regions, regarding to temperatures, regarding to local conditions, etc. So in the end, our endeavor of having these housing and health guidelines has really been complicated by the diversity of evidence that we are facing. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is when we discuss about having a consolidated, uniform typology of indicators for measuring healthy cities, we're facing this challenge of also available evidence. The second example that I would like to bring, as is now the other part though of the story, is WHO. As you know, is the custodian of many health indicators, but recently WHO has become also the custodian of some of the indicators that go beyond health, but are key elements for measuring health, like air pollution and water and sanitation. These are just two examples. So there is also a global effort of bringing into data, into indicators that come outside the health sector, but are key measurements for that are more and more taken up by agencies themselves. So I think these are two big issues that I wanted to raise. They don't answer the questions that we have been posing, but they're showing that how in daily life, in daily work, when we as a WHO organization are trying to figure out what are key standards for health, how we actually be drawing them, and what actually from WHO perspective we are entitled, right, to be calling healthy indicator. We mentioned in the healthy cities work and it is movement. And if you see the different criteria that have been pictured in the slide, you actually, for those criteria, we don't necessarily have the indicators even within WHO. So air pollution, on one hand, we have them. So now we are having indicators for measuring what is the acceptable level for exposure to air pollution. But for green spaces, for example, which one of the criteria of the healthy cities, we still do not have them. So there is still a lot of work to be in that regard. There is one thing I wanted to highlight, which I think is very, very important, is one of the criteria also for healthy cities that has been shown by the students is that you have to look also at policy, so more on policy indicators. Not enough to see what is the exposure to some specific environmental risk factors, but it's also important to understand how actually policies are shaped in order to and to respond, right, to overcoming those environment and health risks. So I think that the health in all policies example is an important one. And we are actually in the moment in WHO working towards developing a measuring framework for assessing how health in all policies or action on health in all policies are implemented in countries at the different levels, national, regional, and local. And if we want to come up with a system for addressing a healthy city, for measuring healthy city, for ranking cities, we take this policy dimension much more into account. A last comment, another comment that I wanted to make about the information, how to use the information. I think that the second panelist mentioned we need to make sure that when we use the indicators, when we develop the indicators, we also think we developing them for what will be done with those indicators. And it's very, very important because otherwise we will face a situation where we will rank cities, but we won't necessarily present how this information will be actually translated into action. And health economic assessment are very, very, very important. So I think one of the things that we need best in this piece of work is really show what will be done with those indicators, how will they be used, and will they be used, for example, in what health impact assessment, in city level, environmental health impact assessment, social impact assessment work, how will it be integrated in what we also discussed, the health economic analysis, because the evolution example that was given, well, there is now more and more work that has been done assessing like the costs, right, of inaction as related to air pollution policies. So we are having more and more evidence about that. So there is really the need, from my perspective, to bring the bridge between the indicator, the content of the indicator, and how this is translated into policy. I realize that when I'm speaking, I'm not answering at all the questions that we have been given on the last slide, but I also think that this is because it's really very difficult to do that. One question, though, that I might want to put on in the discussion is maybe these indicators should also be organized around an SDG framework. The reason I'm saying this is even with the WHO, we have been having a lot of discussions about the Sustainable Development Goals. And as you all know, there is one goal which is focusing on health. But coming from a public health department, coming from an environment and health department, we are making the call actually where you talk about health. Health is much more than goal number 3. It's actually across all goals. So it's a health in all goals approach that we need to take. And I think that this is something very useful at national level, but can be drilled down at the local level. And if we could use this framework for organizing these indicators, this is going to also help us and help also the policymakers to see what of the existing indicators that have been now agreed upon in the SDG discussion we can actually use for this purpose. So my thoughts at the moment. Thanks.
Nothing. Well, I don't think that any of the panelists addressed of the questions. We the questions just in case the panelists wouldn't know what to talk about, but clearly we are not in danger about this. Now, at this point, could I ask Wim whether you would like to add something from the perspective of CIB? CIB is a number of task groups and commissions which conduct work related to what we are doing. Would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I have a couple of remarks. One on the list of commissions you mentioned. We have 50 or so commissions. It would be hard to mention one that's absolutely not relevant to the issue of health and built environment. You talk about procurement systems, enable, stimulate, or not doing for health, or certain materials, or organizational management, line of buildings, they all have potential impact. Health is a very broad topic. Very many decisions have to be and to have an input in there. My second remark is that I really like how you guys presented the definitions from the 3 different domains. 3 different domains and 3 overlapping domains. The domains of sustainability, urban sustainability, sustainability in general, the domain of smart cities, intelligent cities, and the domain of healthy cities. Like I said, I think we take a lot from what has been developed under the heading of sustainability or intelligence is being developed under the heading of intelligence as an input into the discussion on health. I think there's a 4th domain that's becoming more and more important or popular that attracts a lot of, let's say, research funding nowadays and also is developing towards a system of indicators that could be included also. That's the domain of resilience. Resilience or the resilient sustainable built environment, the impact of sustainability, the built environment on resilience. Let's not try to compete with that other domain. Let's include it and collaborate with that, profit from what they are developing under that heading. Talk about sustainability, we talk about urban intelligence, we talk about healthy urban environments, and we talk about resilient urban environments. For me, the 4 big domains. For last remark, CIB has a good, let's say, news service that addresses a lot of people. You want to promote your survey, your indicator survey, and actually, if it's an online survey, publish a news article, invite people to get involved. You'll get hundreds of responses, and you'll really cover the world there. So, an invitation. Think about using the CIB news service to address the world to get involved in this. Thanks.
Much. We will come back to the survey, but perhaps at this point we would see who in the room has a question, comment, or something to add to the discussion. And then we'll see who online has questions or comments. So starting from the room. You say something?
it was really about the livability indicators that were discussed by the students, and one of the panelists talked about Monocle, The Economist, and the Mercer list. They included indicators for health, but then we aimed at not the people who live there, but people of high incomes, executives of companies who are going to move there. So it's kind of interesting that one of the panelists talks about knowing how it were used and by whom. Obviously, the cities that are ranked as livable are extremely attractive. So I can see how an attractive city might also be a healthy city.
Thank you. Yep.
Hi, I think you've done great work, and it's quite mind-blowing to see all the indicators that you've found, and well done. I was just wondering how
Speak to the microphone.
realistic is it to find universal guidelines? I'm just thinking if Neville talked about cycling. You live in a culture where women don't cycle, or they wear clothes which doesn't make it possible for them to cycle. You know, it really, it's still about the people and what they do and the meaning things have for them. And how can you incorporate that into guidelines? It's really possible to have universal guidelines for the world.
Very good question, which we are trying somehow to address. But on the other hand, looking at the other schemes which we've discussed, there are universal guidelines or the universal rankings. So we have the most livable city and we have the smartest city. So it's possible. If health city is more difficult than of the other rankings, or we really try to do it properly yet.
On that question, I guess that I think we have to sometimes think about not so much how we in Australia or New Zealand, for example, might measure something, but what is it that we're trying to do? So if we're talking about kilometre cycle ways and do they connect us, perhaps the indicator is more, are there opportunities for people to engage in physical activity in everyday life that promotes a healthy body in a sense, and whether that might be something in a flat city like Adelaide, a bit more difficult in Brisbane with its hills in summer, for example. So whether it might be cycling or walking or other, so it's the physical activity, and is it incorporated in everyday life in some manner?
I want to follow up also with some of the comments that were just made. Strong advocate of, there are some cities that are going to have variables that, as the comments made earlier, that would skew the data. It would be a livable city, but it wouldn't meet your metrics. So I want to go back to something that Neville and I were talking about earlier, and I cannot remember if you actually mentioned it in the workshop, but there are commonalities that you could use. And although we don't like to talk about this, one of the commonalities that would be universal for all cities would be child mortality, the lifespan of children. And how long do we live in each of these cities, I think would be applicable. So I think we should, in your research, you should look at some of those universal mix, because that might be a key to actually comparing these cities. But I also believe that there are going to be some of these that you're looking at that are going to suspect if you try to put that template across all the cities you're looking at. But I think that Ned did have a really good suggestion about how long do we live in each of these cities, which would be actually a would be a combination of almost all those health factors. And again, you would be able to easily measure that, the combinations that would cause that. So I don't know if you want to follow up with that, but I thought this was a very novel idea to use that as a guide.
Okay. So I was hoping somebody would knock it down. Good. Okay. Can I pass it on? Yeah, please do.
I'm happy to knock it down. I think the biggest problem with neutrality as an index is it could be very discriminating and very useful in less developed and developing countries. But the differences in terms of discrimination become far smaller as we get to developing countries. So it means that you'd need to, when you develop an index of any kind, and this one in particular, is to be able to develop bands of bands of ranges of comparing like with like. If you want to progress to a higher level of livability, if you go from Seattle to Vancouver, it's a lot of diminishing returns in terms of the effort made to improve the life expectancy by a very small fraction in terms of cost and the other things that need to be put into the particular city, not worthwhile. But the chance of moving a child in a developing country from Islamabad to the level of Peshawar, or maybe the other way around, may actually need very little in resource to have a very big effect. And the idea is to say some indices may be broad for the more difficult, not more difficult, for developing countries, and others may be developed then for cities which are in the upper bands.
Add to this or comment? Yeah, that's fine.
Way how you measure the health, if it's healthy or not healthy. So I like the child mortality one, but it's so much about the physical health, physiological health. And I think there is agreement all across the world that health is about physical, psychological, and social health. So what indicator you have at the end, sort of the outcome, what is healthy, should at least cover those three. And I mean, it could be like suicide rates, because the space is good for mental health and all that thing. And again, you have all the policies. So once you say, you know, suicide, okay, or you've got euthanasia problems, you know, you legalize euthanasia, and sometimes that rates go up because all of a sudden it's okay to take your own life. So it's difficult to differentiate them. So I don't have an answer, but I think you should look at all three domains, not just mortality from physiological.
Thank you. We definitely talked quite a lot during this conference already about mental health and the importance of mental health. And in our crowd, huge metropolis, this is certainly becoming a very important aspect. Question: how to start? We know that we know we need indices. We've got a long list to start with, and select among those which already exist. But how to do this? Now, what the students proposed is to conduct a survey. We suggested that this could be done through CIB system. But what will be the outcome? So let's say that at the end of the process, we managed to send the survey to X hundreds of thousands of people, and 50% of them responded. So we would then go by majority, or what's the way of doing this? It's not necessary always that majority has right, particularly the majority is not necessarily informed or aware of something. So what's the way of conducting this survey? Anybody or the panelists to start with?
The current proposal of the students is, you know, to list current indicators and for the participants to say, is it possibly useful or useful? Some of the discussions here, we also need to perhaps have something, could this indicator be a universal indicator, or could it be a indicator that may apply to some particular regions or development? So we need to think about not is it useful or not, but extent of indicators' usefulness in the sense of its universality versus usefulness for only a small section.
So quite an extensive list there, and I didn't see them all, to be honest with you. But so asking people is a really good idea, and you be careful about who you're asking, and I wouldn't be in a mood to trust the majority of the American opinion at the moment. But maybe the CIB mailing list might be an appropriate place to start, right? You're limiting who you're asking in that way. We also have to consider the weighting or the importance. There are a lot of these that are read-offable because they're already in somebody else's index. And we'll be looking at how important the data tells us they are to health too. So we can get rid of a lot of them. We have a lot of these because most people think they're useless. Then you can get rid of a lot of them because actually they have the little impact on any of the domains that we think are important for health. We'll see what we're left with. I would at that stage come back to maybe some of the working group again and ask some of the experts what goal and make it iterative, because we need to consider what we're putting in here because we want to see policy change, and there are some definite policy changes that we want to see around healthy cities, and we want to be promoting those, and it's probably something that need to be put in there anyway because they're important. Yep.
The year of surveying the community, Neville, makes me think of throwing your comment of siloisation back at you, because mostly I think members will have a sensibility about urban issues and building and so on. So there are other citizens who might listen to as well. And I'm sure there are public health people in CIB, but I'm just a little cautious that the indicators will reflect what we already know, kind of thing.
There were questions? In the meantime, we had a question from the room while we work out this microphone.
Yeah, I completely agree that maybe the indicator are not fully determined based on the majority of the respondents. Actually, we do need to select the survey sample, like some basic questions for universal statistical or questionnaire-based survey. So survey sample, how large is enough, and what are the survey targets? I mean, it could be divided into subgroups, like their job profession, are they urban planner, engineers, or what's their building infrastructure, jobs, efficiency, experience level. So, of identifying the potential participants and my comments.
So ideally, we would like to distribute it randomly, the survey around the world.
No. So I'd like to address that too. I have mixed feelings about this, and it's just a monumental effort. And I want to make sure that the students realize that all of this criticism suggestion is nothing. I mean, you've done tremendous work, so we're kind of nitpicking here a little bit. But I want to point out that I don't know, because the people who are not going to use SurveyMonkey valid opinions. I don't mean necessarily the people who aren't CIB members or things like that, but you know, we're all, I think almost all of us in the room are parents and students, and how we value our livability is different. There's personal bias and everything, but I mean, if we're going to say the survey is going to professionals, and I know this is common how this is done, and it goes to people who are looking at this from the way we're looking at it, we're going to miss an opportunity to find out what people who are not in this room feel about livability, and I think that that's a missed opportunity. So I'm not an expert in how to do the survey, but I think we need to be cautious about it's going to be this. I love SurveyMonkey, do it all the time, but I think that it's such an important topic. Everybody cares about and wants to see how does our city rate on this, and I would like to make sure that we're not missing it's from populations that, and being just real blunt, that don't even have internet access, because I feel like they're going to have an opinion of what is a livable city that conveyed. I like to think that we're all on the internet, but I know we're not as a society. So let's be careful about maybe the most important topic today is who do you send the survey to? That does going to answers, I think, and so I think that's an important point.
Thank you. Did you want to add something before we read the questions on the screen from the online participants?
So I just want to knock down the straw man of we do it by a popular vote, because clearly, and that was the point was well made, that we should identifying areas of expertise and asking not the CIB, but who are going along the extreme left-hand side, that we have groupings of what each of the indicators are, and we need to be asking experts in each of these areas which these indicators most strongly influence health or influence health policy. We have to question what our framing is. Are we looking to just ruthlessly develop a healthy city, or to show a tool that can be used to help you develop a healthy city? Yeah.
Natalie, can I make a comment? So I just wanted to stress some of the comments made before and just express a word of caution in setting this out through a standardized and across the world. I think that the first steps should really be to think what are the categories of people that we would like to reach out, being first by expertise, built environment, public health, and others, but also by type of professions, being researchers, being policymakers, etc. So in order to better understand whose feedback is actually most required. And then I think that once this has been done, then a survey can be sent up, but there is a need of having some kind of focused discussions, maybe not with everybody, because it's something that is not going to be implementable, but with those groups, within those categories that will be identified, there will be the need of having some kind of more in-depth discussion. The disadvantage of this would be that it is much more time consuming, and this makes the task much more complicated. But I think that there is a need of having this more in-depth discussion for really understanding regional or local differences and needs.
Lead to that, Wim here.
Yes.
If you use the CIB system, you will have a good reach in the academic community. And that you need to define your target group, and this is only one of them. So I'm not suggesting to use that system as the only approach. The WHO has its own network, the network of mayors. There are many networks that you may want to use in that. Second comment, don't suggest too much that the system of indicators has as a primary goal only to be able to rank cities. Also a tool to help develop and design better cities or more healthy cities. To, let's say, profile a city and recognize possibilities for improvement. A good, let's say, founded in academic roots system of indicators has many uses. And you have to tell that if you say do it to whoever, because many people will have in the back of their minds an indicator is to rank cities. That's not enough. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. At this point, we'd like to read the questions from the audience connected online. Would you like, we see the questions here, but perhaps you'd like to read this question?
More of a suggestion from Alan Kabir. So the International World Building Institute, pioneered by Dallas, USA, introduced a world building standard, which, in my opinion, is similar to the goal of CIB. The standard 7 concepts relevant to well-being in the built environment. The concepts include air, water, noise, light, fitness, comfort, and mind. We look at it to get a feeling of how it was developed.
This is certainly a very useful comment, and something important to take into account. I'm going to ask, so we now understand the complexity of the survey and how carefully we need to think about this, how to conduct it, where to deliver to whom. But perhaps we could also discuss a little bit here about the organizations which already conducted survey and have data and looked at this from different angles. So the organizations which ranked sustainable cities, livable cities, and so on. Should we somehow capitalize on their experience? Should we link with them and try to work with them, particularly when it comes to the data which they have collected? What would you suggest how to start these conversations and what it's worth it?
So I'm wondering how the boundary condition of city is it easy to find where is the boundary? If the transportation is beyond the boundary, so how can I evaluate those kind of things? It's very important for evaluate. I think.
What is the city? Where is the in and end of the city? Name on this or general question or general comment on the topic?
I feel like I've been commenting a bit. So it's really good, but on working with other agencies, a lot of those, a lot of the indicators they've used are valid, and especially for the honest ones, I know they're publicly. Some of them are publicly available, and some of them they'll ask you to pay for. And we should probably be looking at the publicly available ones first, because let's keep the cost when we're doing research. But more important is to look at where goals are different to theirs. And the important point is that the Autonomous Livability Index is for executives and to promote cities, and how nice Rosemary made that point. Whereas we'd very much, I'd like if this was a goal that was promoting health and health from the bottom up. And that's the health view, that the best gain is gotten by those who are at the bottom of the pyramid and not at the top. So in that way, we'd be looking at quite a different index.
This perhaps comes to the point made by Natalie and the question, who we're using this, who we expect that would be using this, or who we would like to be using this. Do you have any further comments on this, Natalie? Apart from lists for example, in the Time magazine, ever so often, they've got always some data section, and they list interesting things. So that's where we read these things. But clearly, we are not looking only at the readers of the Time magazine or another magazine, but we're using this. Wendy wants to say something.
I would really like our TV news channels to use this. So every night on the national news, we get a report on something that reflects the health of the city that the news is in. So what is the suicide rate? How many people have been diagnosed with diabetes, or whatever it is, that I would like to see the health, obviously, as part of national news, the same as they tell about what's happened in sport, and they go on and on and on about, well, in Australia, about the share market, for example. I'd like health to be part. So I would like some indicators that we can actually use on national television.
Journalists here in the room who could comment on this, how attractive to the journalist would this be? The question is whether the journalists would find it sufficiently.
But that the role, that it should be the community that asks the media for what we want to hear. I think it's up to the community to demand some things that the journalists are meant to be serving, not being what is here, in my opinion.
Go to Natalie, who would be using this. WHO be using this ranking list?
Difficult question. We would be using it, so we would be contributing to it. I don't know how, one of the policies, obviously, within WHO is not necessarily in trying as much as possible not to put immediate comparison between one country towards another, a city towards another, right? So efforts that we're going to be making is not necessarily to point in slides every day in WHO first page is saying, look at the cities, this is doing the best. And so we're facing some challenges with doing that. However, I think is going to be used is in the work that we are increasingly doing at country level, local level, also in some of the key cities of cities that are mostly affected by environmental risk factors. And this is something, some kind of shift, even paradigm that is happening within our own work in our department, where we realize that although we have to be working on getting some agreements and on national level, we should support states to working more at local level. And in this regard, for example, we are now starting to initiate a big urban health initiative with some of major cities affected by air pollution, where we really want to go and work with them. So this kind of work, these kind of indicators, this kind of ranking obviously will be a key tool for supporting and engaging with the local municipalities in looking at the key environmental risk factors that they are facing. How much we will be promoting that, if I can say, on our first pages, I don't know, because there is a political concern, even in the mandate that WHO has, right, in not wanting to put or an entry with another or a city with another.
Okay, this is a very important point. What I'm thinking is that perhaps the last few minutes of this workshop will spend discussing how to identify resources for this activity. This is certainly, we all seem to agree, very important. Having this kind of ranking would be absolutely great, would be useful, would promote health, but we've already realized how huge task it is. So we may progress this a little bit through the students project. Perhaps there will be some few more students. There will be some enthusiasts from this CIB task group 86. But this is a massive task. So to really get to the point that we have the ranking, all the indicators, all the measures, we would need quite a lot of resources. Where to find these resources? Who to ask for money?
Well, let me address where to start. You have in these that represent a number of different countries that have access to the resources within our own countries. I can't. Thanks. So for instance, if you were, and I'll give you my cards when we're done, if you were to say to me, you know, Mr. What are the resources in the United States where people have already started to pursue this, I would just send them to you. I think that, but I'm not as familiar with what's happening in New Zealand, which is why I'm really excited that I'm at this conference. But I think that starts us and see what brains first, and then find from us who the other players are that, and then there. So I think we're to tap into what the resources are available is easy, at least to begin, but then to expand into a lot of people. But that's with all of the different as you have in here, I think that that's necessary. But I think that, again, I want to also address who's going to use this. I know I will. What I do at the university is I teach the next generation of architects and engineers and planners who have control over those ideas, who can then say, when we get into professional practice, we understand what a role is in the future to make these cities more healthy and more livable. So I think that there are some people who really do want this when it's available.
Thanks. At a late day, I feel like I've just woken up and thought of a few more things that I wanted to add. A key thing, and the conversation that we've just had really points to the fact that the more detail there is, the less wieldy it is. And one of the panelists earlier said it must really mean a lot to us if there are a lot of indicators. But no, I think back on various kinds of guidelines that I might be involved in as I have to sort of refer to as a professional, and I also referred to a code today in my paper where there are so many parts to it that it's almost impossible to meet. So it really just needs to have maximum 3 key things, I think. I don't really know what they are, but there'd be a healthy environment, a place that promotes or supports healthy relationships, and enrichment of the whole population as opposed to impoverishment across all those areas. And in terms of what you wish for, sometimes you can sort of these lovely things like compact city, walkable city, diverse neighbourhoods, convivial public open spaces, all of those things. But that could easily be applied to the Dharavi slum, for example, you know, where people actually, those kinds of things actually happen there. I mean, there are lots of other things that happen that are not so great. So let's need to have the story from several sides, I think.
Yes. I think it shows us that cities and city councils, and maybe there are world-based city council, would actually sponsor this kind of work. But if I were a city councillor, I would to something which has got a ranking. It's very likely that my city won't be number 1. If I think I'm going to be number 1, I'll support it, yes. But if I think I'll maybe number 30, I wouldn't be keen. And what I would be looking for would be guidelines like best practice, and or easy wins. Probably, access to free healthcare is probably, an easy win. Guided by that, rather than being that there is a value judgment on it. So I would not like that, because it's really difficult to change the city. So Green Building Council can be, there's all the new buildings. So easy, but if you've got an existing city, and most of the cities are existing, we don't have mass going up and every day. It takes a long time, so I'd rather have guidelines than a ranking.
Very good, John.
I'm going to agree. I think my involvement at plan development level has been with the plan developers at local levels. And since the Ottawa Charter and all of our environmental health principles are about acting locally and thinking globally, it is a good thing to do. But I do agree that making a ranking would be particularly divisive. And we don't want to be like the Homer Simpson world where we have Shelbyville and what one called. And but I think the key there is where WHO can act here is to allow access to data that are used to create listings and rankings, to allow access to models that people to calculate for themselves their ranking or the position relative to a group or a concept even. And that will allow people to then, or communities and planners and developers for the community, to an aspirational view. We know what numbers we can generate ourselves, and we know what we want to achieve, and we can look at that ourselves without having to be listed relative to Shelbyville.
In the last few minutes remaining, do the panelists in the room or online have final comments, pressing questions, or something to add? We still have 4 minutes, so there's time to do this.
Speaking.
Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really like one of the comments from the floor, saying actually the added value of this type of exercise is to show, highlighting where improvements can be made and the best cases and good practices. I think this is really the added value of this exercise, showing better definition that we would provide about what is a healthy or sustainable, or however we want to call it, and if cities do change their policies or their interventions and strategies, show that there has been an improvement. This type of exercise could really add the value of showing the best practices and to support others to do the same. I think this should be somehow the strategy and also the slogan for developing it.
Direction of this activity. Well, hearing any comments?
Like the students, though, for
microphone, please.
It's a very difficult task for evaluate the whole things of the city. Do you have the category of the crime, for example, child poverty, or many things should be included, but it's a task, so you should have some limitations.
The conditions and be pragmatic about this. Michael?
Oh, I would say I think the panel would agree it's fantastic what you've done as students, and I highly encourage you to keep working on this. I think we all see that there is value, and it's going to be a lot of work still, and you may need more people to help you with this, but I think that we see the value, and so a lot of our comments are based on how to make it better and how to make it more usable. But anyway, but keep working on this. It's fantastic what you're doing.
Opinion of this now, for the scientific research, for small topics, small things, it's easy to find the funding to support the research. Why? Because we can get the clear solution. But for very complicated, very important task, it's difficult to find the funding. Why? Because in the near future, in the limited time, it's difficult to find a good solution. I think healthy city is a very important, complicated task. Without funding support, I think it's difficult to get a good and solid research. I wish WHO or other foundation could give funding to such research. This is my suggestion.
Thank you very much. And on this positive comments, we will wrap up this workshop webinar. I would like to just remind you that this has been recorded, so the comments will be then transcribed. We'll have a summary of this, and certainly we'll continue with this and hopefully with the involvement of all of present here, enthusiastically supporting this. We are thanking very much Natalie and the WHO, and most of all we are thanking CIB for providing support of this, support this task group, and we hope that this support will continue. Thank you very much. Everybody, good night, good morning.
Thank you, bye-bye.